Good friend of ours, good friend of the program, Chris Carlson, Syracuse.com, to talk some SU football. Chris, how are you today?
Not bad. Great song. Like you guys picked it for me.
Yes, we love 1980. We love the one-hit wonders, and it just so happens we're doing the year 1982 today. Before we get into, I know you just wrote an article, and you've written several articles regarding the quarterback position. Do you think there is the term quarterback controversy came up on our show today? Do you think there is actually a controversy right now, or is this just a hot topic among fans at the moment?
I think controversy is probably too strong a word for it, because controversy strikes me as there's some sort of internal debate over who the starter is, and I don't think Fran Brown has given us any reason to think that he's contemplating a quarterback change. I do think it is a question that is on most Syracuse fans' mind, and one that's worth asking. So I would call it a quarterback question more than a quarterback controversy, because I don't think there's a whole lot of hemming and hawing within the Syracuse football program on who the starter is. I could be wrong. Maybe they are having those internal conversations, but just, everything Fran Brown has said about the quarterbacks is, Ricky's like a freshman out there because he's making his first two starts since high school, and it's our job to support him 100%. So that doesn't strike me as a guy who's contemplating pulling the trigger heading into Pitt.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. And that's where I stand as well, and that's kind of why I asked you the question. I was curious where your head was at on this topic. All right, so you wrote an article about 4 things Fran Brown should consider when making the decision on who starts at quarterback. What's the biggest factor in your mind of those 4 he needs to consider?
He can't lose. To me, he can't lose the team. He can't lose the team over this choice. We don't know if Luke Carney is good or not, right? None of us have seen Luke in weeks throw a football. Even in training camp, I think we were all sort of focused on Ricky and Steve and not paying a ton of attention to Luke. When we saw Luke in the spring, his throwing motion looked really sort of funky to me. I didn't notice that in training camp, which is a good sign. It seemed like he'd made a lot of sort of strides there. We don't know where he stands right now in terms of his development. We have no clue. But if the team thinks he is better than Ricky, and if the team thinks he gives them a better chance to win, Fran can't keep sending Ricky out there because these guys want to win now, and they are in practice every day, and they see it. So if it is a case where Luke has surpassed Ricky in the minds of his teammates, the choice is sort of made for you as a coach. You just have to go that way because you need the rest of the season to be productive. You need your guys to be bought in. You need them to be working hard, and they're not going to do that if they see you sending somebody onto the field who gives them a worse chance to win. I'm not saying that's the case, but to me, that's the number one thing is you can't mess that up.
Let's assume, for the sake of argument, the sake of this discussion, that Ricky remains the starter going into the Pittsburgh game. I think you and I both believe that will be the case. So if that is the case, how much realistically can he improve from here to the end of the season? And in what areas in particular are you looking for improvement out of Ricky Collins?
I've called this 2 weeks in a row, and I know my readers don't like it. I've called this sort of a lost season, or saying that their games aren't meaningful the rest of the way. And I just think that's true. I think Ricky is so far behind that they can't win enough games to make the end of the season, special in any real way. So to your point, I do think you are just looking for progress from Ricky. So I imagine, we've all seen it. I know Syracuse's coaches haven't talked about it, but I think we all think that Ricky is making his decisions too early and locking on to a receiver and letting the defenses read his eyes. Does he get better at looking off safeties? Does he get better at working through his progressions? He is not going to reach Steve Angeli level this season. I think that much is sort of clear. But he's young, and that does take time. And I think you want to just know that he's making steps in the right direction versus just he is who he is. So I think just some of those things. Does he start getting through his progressions a little bit faster? Is he able to show some signs of being able to look off the defense? And to me, that's really what you're looking for, out of that position the rest of the way, because he's not going to get all the way there.
I realize there's some speculation with this next question, but let's assume that even if Ricky gets marginally better, but not substantially better, do you see any way that he comes back next year? I guess what would the chances be in your mind that Ricky Collins is on the roster come next season?
So I'll be honest. Once Steve started this year and played really well, I just sort of assumed Ricky was gone.
Yeah.
Right? Like Steve was the starting quarterback, and Ricky thinks he's a starter and was close to Steve, so Ricky's going to leave because Ricky wants to play. I actually think the chances are better that Ricky comes back now because I don't know what the market is going to look like for him.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like is any team watching these games and being like, that's who I want as my starting quarterback next year? That's who I want to bring in? I don't think so. Right. So there isn't a market for Ricky unless he drops down.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe not a power forward, but right. That's kind of what I was thinking. And maybe drops down a level, starts somewhere, that kind of thing.
And even then, like, he might be in a Carlos Del Rio Wilson situation where Carlos is playing really well at Marshall right now, but like he wasn't the starter to start the season there. Like he had to take a backup job at a group of 5 school to leave. So if Ricky shows signs, like maybe he says, "Hey, I'll be the backup here," and maybe the coaching staff sees enough and it says, "Hey, like we're okay with you being the backup to Steve next season." I don't think so, right? I think usually when you're the starter and you're not young, and Ricky's not young really in terms of eligibility at this point, he'll probably leave. But I actually think, oddly enough, like the chances have increased that he sticks around because he's not done well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Increase from what, 0 to 10%? I mean, is that kind of what we're talking?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I get that. How about the play of the defense right now? I mean, we're focused and hyper focused on the offense for good reason. But the defense has had its issues as well. Defense looked really good against Clemson, but it's been mixed reviews this season. What do you make of the performance out of that unit?
I have a really hard time with this because, like, you look at the transfers they've brought in, and the big names have been on offense. It seems like they have spent their money to improve the offense. When I looked at the defense before the season, I was like, well, the defensive line isn't going to be very good, and we don't know anything about the linebackers, but they're probably not going to be very good. So my expectations for the defense were very low entering the year, and they've sort of met those expectations. So I don't know what that says about the coach. Like I get that people want to see it be better, and maybe it should be better. But I don't think Elijah Robinson has like a lot to work with right now on that side of things. Like the defensive line is just not really creating a pass rush. The linebacker play outside of Antoine Delorier hasn't been very good. And, like, their two safeties who are their best players, we think, like Deuce Chestnut and Devin Grant, have been hurt. And that's right up the middle of the defense. So I have a difficult time sort of assessing that other than, like, it hasn't been very good.
Yeah, and along those lines, I mean, you talk about that you felt like coming into the season that there were some weak areas on the defense. You look at the depth chart right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's – I want to say 11 players on the depth chart just on defense that are either freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores, or redshirt sophomores. So guys that have a lot of eligibility remaining. Do you feel like the pieces are there that maybe next year, a year older, year better, you add some pieces from the portal that you feel like, all right, the defense, if you could bring that core back, it's going to be okay? Or do you think they've got to make massive changes on that side of the ball?
I think the core is generally okay, except like the defensive line needs a ton, and whether that's internally guys stepping up and guys improving and being much better next season, or whether that's going out and trying to, put all your transfer portal resources behind the defensive line, I don't know. But they're pretty old on the defensive line, right? I mean, they have veteran guys. Tank Wilson I don't think has any eligibility remaining. If I'm not mistaken, Kevin Jobety's done. Dennis Chiquez is done. David Reese is done. David Omo-Periola is the guy who has sort of flashed in terms of showing some potential there, and he'll be back. But that's one guy who's flashed, and to me, they need a whole defensive line. So maybe there are guys that are showing out in practice, or who, with a year of development, they think will be ready. But I certainly can't say that I've seen that. I feel good about most of the other positions. I feel really good about cornerback with Demetrius and Chris Peel. Antoine Delorier has obviously been great, and I think he can find another linebacker to give you some decent play. But just the defensive line, they're going to need to figure that out.
All right, let's circle back to the quarterback position as we kind of wrap things up here. Percent chance in your mind that they change quarterbacks for the Pittsburgh game? I can't read Fran's mind, so I'm going to give it a 20% chance. Okay.
I don't know what's in his mind, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen either. Percent chance we see Luke Carney start a game at some point. Maybe I've been saying BC game if you're going to make a change and they're out of bowl eligibility. They can't qualify for a bowl. Maybe you see him there. What are the chances in your mind we see Luke Carney before the end of the season start a game?
I'm going to go 70% on that. Both because I think there's a possibility that they could do it just because it's not working with Ricky. They might think Luke is better, and there's also a possibility, obviously, that Ricky gets hurt. So you sort of combine all those things together, and I do think that there's a pretty good chance we see Luke start a game this year. And
then lastly, give me a percent chance that this team makes it to a bowl game.
2 weeks from now is the biggest one, right? I think they'll beat North Carolina, and I think they'll beat BC at home. Pittsburgh is probably better than Syracuse from what we've seen this year, but Syracuse has 2 weeks to prepare for a team that you sort of know what they're going to do defensively. They do it really well, but you know the plan. I'm going to say 35% chance they make a bowl game. So that's sort of giving them 35% chance to beat Pitt. Yeah. I mean, it's an enormous game. And again, Pittsburgh's playing Florida State at Florida State to tune up. Syracuse has that week off, as you mentioned, extra time to prepare. Desperate team. They obviously need this one. Both teams are going to need it. But, it's going to be interesting. I'm with you. I think that this Pittsburgh game really determines the rest of the season. They win it. Bowl game very much on the table. They lose it. And it's hard to add up to 6 at that point if they're 3-4 and that gauntlet coming up with Georgia Tech and Miami and Notre Dame after that. Chris, as always, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much for the insight. Yeah, anytime, guys.
All right, Chris Carlson from Syracuse.com. With that, we will hit our final timeout. Paulie will rejoin us on the other side, and we'll wrap things up next.